Greetings in the name of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie the First, Jah Rastafari Selassie the First. Yeah, we're here once again to have a great discussion about Africa, and even more so about the militarization of Africa. And we have to answer some questions. One is, why did the first black four-star general of AFRICOM suddenly disappear from the headlines, and who replaced him? Um, this information may be public. Maybe some of y'all already know the answer to these questions, but as far as it stands, they don't technically have a reason why this man has been fired yet. So it's something we definitely got to ask ourselves: what's going on here? You know what I mean? Um, it's something that we're not being told about Africa's militarization and America's hidden strategy on the continent. Now, I think this is going to shock a lot of you. Some of the things we're going to go over today. So, I just wanted to kind of lay the foundation and the groundwork for those watching, those that stay tuned. Please like, share, subscribe. Stay tuned into our channel. We're going to continue giving you guys updated feedback on current events, past events, and things that we're looking forward to in the future. That being the case, be on the lookout for gatewaytozion.org. It's going to be up and running very shortly. Looking forward for all of you guys that are continuing to support our movement. We're just excited about what we got planned here for the rest of the year 2025. So that being said, Brother Josh, did you want to add anything onto that intro? Anything you wanted to speak on before we get into all of this?
Yeah, sure. I know that, I didn't actually know about his firing until recently, but I know that the last that I'd heard about him, about the four-star general Michael Langley,
right,
was after the events that have been going on in the Sahel states with Ibrahim.
I'm here. I'm listening.
Yeah, okay. But after the events that have been going on in the Sahel states, Ibrahim Traore leading, this kind of just bringing the energy of this rising of Pan-African movement with his militarization. I know that Michael Langley had came being the
head of
spokesperson, being the spokesperson for AFRICOM. He kind of came at him, saying, because of like him going back to like gold, gold based currencies and stuff like that.
Right. He came at who again?
Ibrahim Traore.
Okay, yeah, as well as other African leaders. Yes. Okay. Right. Yeah, he did throw some shade. That's how we say it. He threw a little shade and a little salt and a little pepper on his game. But go ahead, continue.
Right. And I want to say because of the I don't know if it was because of the backlash that he got, because the people are no longer falling for the propaganda. They see what Ibrahim Traore and all these leaders are rising up and doing. And,
right.
People aren't falling for the propaganda. So eventually he kind of came back, and kind of tried to reverse what he was saying. He tried to say something along the lines of, "Oh no, we're just trying to make sure that the gold is being used properly," or
right.
And then I guess since then, now, like you said, he's gotten fired. I'm not really sure.
Right. Or in those terms, a lot of times when you're that high on the chain, you don't get fired, but you get quietly asked to step down or resign and replaced. So I don't know how that works, but he's no longer the head of AFRICOM, and they don't and have not given us an actual reason why. But we are left to speculation, and I think the point that you brought is valid from a historical context. He did throw shade. There was a lot of backlash about that shade, and that could have set a precedence for him being a leader and a face. And I think more importantly, and then to add to that, he did an interview with an African reporter, this woman, where he didn't look so good after the interview. If you watch and pay attention, it looked really bad for him. You know what I mean? And I think that the reason why it looked bad is because he started to pander. He started to kind of act like he was quote unquote pro-black, and that was the foremost agenda of his mind. And now that can come off like, for us who are genuinely constantly focused on the strengthening of our people around the world, we're not taken by tokenism anymore. Like a lot of Western African, Pan-African, BLA, whatever you want to call yourself, there's a lot of people out there, they hear that and immediately go, oh, he's on our side. Like recently, Trump said that this black woman was a beautiful woman in the White House. This Congolese representative, from what I understand. And this kind of makes you feel like he cares, gives you a sense of, oh, this is our people. I think it could be a good sign, could be true. There could be some authenticity there, but then again, it could be pandering, right? And because there's a track record of pandering and tokenism and these things, we can't really jump to conclusions. We can't do it because been too many times that there was something small done, like this drug dealer was set free, and now it's like all of the other racist things that have been happening are now forgiven or forgotten. Right. So eternal vigilance means being mindful, thinking under the surface, and staying woke. And I hate the term woke, the colloquial term, because it's been co-opted, but it was a legitimate grassroots term used in Philadelphia by black people who wanted other black people to stay vigilant. For lack of a better term, I like to use the term Negro. But anyway, moving forward. So that being said, why was this 4-star general essentially terminated as the head of AFRICOM? In my opinion, the militarization of Africa will change and transform the global economy forever. Right? Here's why. You remember a few years back, around 2011-12 time frame, Muammar Gaddafi was talking about creating a gold standard as the currency base for Africa, which would have destroyed the American dollar, right? Mm-hmm. And it's being the world reserve currency, it would have definitely collapsed the United States economy. But that, to me, as powerful of a move as it would have been, it would have meant nothing without militarization. Because you can go and change your currency all you want, but if we have a military might to come in there and overthrow whatever dictator, we can essentially derail everything that you're trying to do. But if you have a militarized zone, and hear me out, I think most Americans are in the mind state that only nuclear weapons represents power and force. No. Look at history and look at how United States and other embassies have shut down because of chaos in certain regions in Africa. And look how immediately there's a call for Americans that are abroad in these unstable regions to return, right? What this means is that they can't technically sustain or keep control in these regions any longer. So now they have to prepare for other means of what I would call neo-colonialism. If you don't know what that word means, go look it up. So what is this all saying? 3 countries. What are the 3 countries that are talking about unifying into one? I believe it's Burkina Faso.
Mm-hmm. Burkina Faso. Niger.
Here, let's check.
Okay.
What are the three countries that are unifying into one state in Africa again? So we can quick reference. It's fine.
Mali. Mali.
And Mali. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. It's called the AES Charter, which was signed by three countries establishing a defense and mutual assistance pact. This is powerful, man. This is powerful. It was established in January 2024. All three announced withdrawal from ECOWAS, the Western African Economic Bloc, accusing it of serving foreign Western interests. And plans began moving towards greater political and economic integration, signaling a move towards a confederation or eventual unified state. Now, this is crazy because y'all already see the noise that Burkina Faso is making around the world and how it's now stirring up the minds and hearts of what you would call descendants of Africa globally. So now what would this look like if these three states unified? What does a militarized Africa look like? You see, before, like I always say, imagine having to hand over a 10-pound diamond for a quarter pounder with cheese, right? And now you have a situation where you may turn around and actually be able to negotiate with the highest bidder for that 10-pound diamond. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So now, how does this affect Western societies' economies? Because if I was getting it for a quarter pounder with cheese, and now I got to pay the value of it, which is 10 million or whatever it is for that size diamond, depending on where you're getting it, the quality of the cut, then that's going to change what we call the quality of life in Western countries unbelievably and unprecedented. It's going to transform, it's going to transform commerce. It's going to transform the global economy because the Western powers and the dollar is the world reserve currency still to this day. So now what does the West do? You see, in 2005, the United States started to create AFRICOM with a claim that they're trying to fight against terrorism, counter-terrorism, which is fascinating because we have to ask ourselves, does Western countries have a history of generating, financing, and arming militant groups like the Mujahideen, right? Who essentially was put in place to try to secure military and commercial interests in Saudi Arabia, right? While Osama bin Laden's father was building all of these installations and commercial buildings for the means of extracting oil out of Saudi, the Mujahideen had to be put in place to offset the Iranian and Russian influence in those regions. So now the Mujahideen, after that was accomplished and they had created a stronghold there, what did they turn into? From what I understand, they turned into the Taliban, right? Mm-hmm. Let's not forget about their ally, Israel, who played a major role in establishing the militant groups that they're fighting against today. What's the militant group that Israel's fighting against right now in Palestine? Hold on. I'll pull it up.
Okay.
Okay, pulling it up now. All right. Hamas, right?
Hamas, yeah.
So founded in 1987, functions as both a militant organization and governing political party. And this is where the duality of this and the nature of this group comes into play, and it's hard to essentially attack because on one end they're a legitimate government governing political party, on the other end they're a militant organization. Right? Funny because segue, Elon Musk just threatened Donald Trump that he would establish a political party. You see, political parties can become militant here through Hamas, right? While Donald Trump is threatening to deport Elon Musk and to start hammering down on his business interests, all because of this one big, beautiful bill. So it's fascinating, which just passed, by the way. News alert, which just passed, by the way. So I wanted to delve into a couple other things, but I want you to give some of your feedback, Brother Josh, as far as some of the things we discussed, anything on the forefront of your mind. And I'm going to kind of go over some of my notes so we can move forward with this. And then we'll close maybe 15, 20 minutes from now.
Okay. Well, I did see about the wars that is going on between Elon and Trump still, like you just mentioned. And it's
I'm here.
You good?
Just picking up my phone. Go ahead.
I'm really trying to. I guess for me, I'm kind of trying to like understand.
Well, not necessarily wanted to get your feedback on the Trump. That was a side note. More interested in getting your feedback about the militarization of Africa, how AFRICOM is actually looking after American interests while claiming they're looking after African interests, which obviously are not always going to align. This is why Africa is clearly leaning more towards Russian and Chinese sustainability and support economically and with infrastructure. So, how do you feel? Do you feel like Africa's militarizing? And if they are, how long do you think it could take before Africa's militarization begins to affect the way of life in the Western Hemisphere?
I do believe that Africa is militarizing, and not even because of AFRICOM, which, like you said, anything that's created like from the U.S., it's I believe they're always going to make sure that they're serving U.S. interests.
Interest, precisely, right?
Under the guise of it being like a mutual thing. But I do think that Africa truly is militarizing because we see these countries. We see not even just the Sahel states, but the Horn of Africa. We see the whole continent really basically making this claim now that it's time to do things independently and just to completely separate themselves from the West. But as far as how long it would take before it starts affecting the West or specifically the United States, I think it could definitely take a while because there's a lot of different strongholds that I think that Africa still has to break. Financial ties that they have. And then also internal conflicts that I think that need to be absolved.
Right.
And I do see there are other, factors at play as far as like other countries that are forming alliances like BRICS, for example. You have
Right.
BRICS, which is going against NATO, the North American, treaty.
Yes.
So we do see these alliances that are happening, within the global South to go against the global North. So I don't know the actual time frame that it would take before the global North, or specifically the U.S., would actually take a hit.
Right.
You see it affecting us economically and whatnot. I don't know.
Okay. So let me paint a picture because that's a great segue. How long would it take? Here's my opinion, right? And I'm
Mhm.
just gonna go from the heart and from what I do know. What I know is that America took approximately 200 years or so to become the powerhouse that it is. America emerged into this powerhouse after World War II, right? Because it sat back while the war was taking place and got involved towards essentially at a pivotal right time in the war, where in which they could sway right the outcome, right.
Mhm.
So let's look at Africa. Africa's a continent. America's 1/5 the size of Africa, if that. From what I understand, you could put China, Russia, America, South America, all of that in Africa and still have space.
Yeah.
So for Africa to militarize with European interests involved, with Chinese interests involved, with Russia's interests involved, with the world involved, and with their international treaties through the United Nations, non-alignment movement, the African Union, and all of these different organizations have international laws, right? And then, like you said, NATO's interests and the European Union interests and the Asian Union interests in these things. What happens is that you have to essentially go through much more yellow tape. That's what I would call neo-colonialism, which has impacted the global economy. But I think that it is very much so possible when you have these three primary unified states coming together. It encourages other states to feel empowered. You see, because when you have like a nuclear standoff, it's a standoff that works for nobody because the first person that lets off a nuke, the next one is done for. And the United States nor Russia is not going to turn and fire off a nuke at Africa because they depend on African resources. It would be ass backwards, right? So this puts Africa in almost like an untouchable space. The world depends on the heart of Africa for economics. So this puts now the battlefield and the battleground has to be on the ground, and that's why AFRICOM now is invented in 2005 because they started to see a shift in the political arena where Africa was starting to militarize, and you could see that with Gaddafi's contributions, right? I think Gaddafi gave Africa their first satellite. Africans used to have to call America just to call next door. So then his threats to create the dinar or the to combat the dollar or the gold currency. So if Africa starts to militarize and protect its assets, which is obviously doing, otherwise there'd be no need for these organizations, right? Then this could be a swift thing. I think it could be a 50-year or 100-year thing, and I think that the battles will be on the ground, like what Burkina Faso is dealing with. They are essentially creating the blueprint, which is actually not created by Burkina Faso. It was already legitimately made by Haile Selassie.
Mm.
Why do I say that? Because His Majesty, if you go study the economics of Ethiopia and the militarization of Ethiopia, His Majesty leveraged nations against nations. That means I'll get training from. That means I'll liberate my nation by Britain, and then I'll use the military institution CAGNU as a leverage point to elicit help from America, who's the new emerging power in the Western world, right? And then because Britain and America's relationship is immutable, I'll essentially turn them one on the other, and then I'll start looking to Russia for assistance. So now all of these nations are not only helping train my military might, but now they're also fighting economically, because if Russia gives me finances and they're beefing with America, and America wants to keep a stronghold in Africa, and I'm the head of the African Union, now guess what? America has to give me finances, right? Loans.
Mhm.
And then if Russia gave me loans and America gave me loans, what am I doing with it? I'm putting it into paying, right, for them to train my military. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna leverage that because who's Germany beefing with? All right, let me go to them and get the loan. All right, Germany beefing with them. All right, now because I got the loan from them, now Germany's gonna give me a loan. That's how that goes. So eventually, now you got money at your hand and disposal. And the reason why Africa is in such an amazing position, more than any other European nation can even boast, is because of the assets and the potential of this untapped market, right? Where in which now, see, countries like China are like, yo, this is awesome because we're going to go ahead and start getting involved now with this untapped market because they weren't essentially doing what Europe was doing prior to World War II. Hand me a diamond, 10-pound diamond for a quarter pounder with cheese. China wasn't really doing it on the level that Britain was benefiting, nor was Russia. Russia was late to the scramble for Africa. Same thing with Italy. So their economies were never really dependent on Africa the same way. See what I'm saying? And I don't mean they're not dependent on African economy. What I mean is they weren't making money hand over fist off of us to be that dependent. That's what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So what does a militarized Africa look like? That's the segue I want to ask you. I'm gonna listen, but I'm gonna cover my face for a second. I want to hear what you got to say, and then I'm gonna give my feedback. I'm still here. Okay. Good. I'm listening.
Well, I think that after the way you just described, Haile Selassie and how, his military, his under the Ethiopian empire was the blueprint for what is happening in Burkina Faso and in the Sahel states. I would say that would be what a militarized Africa looks like. If His Imperial Majesty is set the blueprint, for how to maneuver these wars and how to maneuver basically just how to maneuver in that aspect, then I would say that the military Africa whose military resembles that of Ethiopia's would be what I would say the peak or the height of a militarized Africa would look like.
Okay, now we have to put that in context because we have to reference the 1960s Ethiopia, whose economy was doing and thriving just as much as the U.S. economy. Only difference was when you look at the leverage Ethiopia had being the Horn of Africa, right? Ethiopia is not dependent on America's position in the world, geographically speaking. But the United States is dependent on Ethiopia's geographical location. Feel what I'm saying? Because of the Suez Canal, because of the Nile. I've described this in previous videos. If you go and check those out, which you should, you'll see that we reference that Europe extracts every morning. Y'all drink coffee. A lot of times y'all have ice cream. You want chocolate in everything that you eat, from candy bars to ice cream to the cereal you eat in the morning, to the Pop-Tarts your kids eat, right? Mineral wealth. When you're talking about most of the stuff your phone is made of, or the tires your car has on them from the Congo, all of that is coming from Africa. So now imagine if you're a European nation and you have to go and travel and trek all the way around the west coast of Africa, all the way down past Namibia, all the way, right, all the way around, all the way up to the Horn of Africa just to get your materials. It'd be impractical, right? So that region stability is quintessential to European domination. You cannot dominate a global market without having global resources. I'll say it again. You cannot dominate a global market without having global resources. So those African resources are quintessential to the West's hegemony and power over the global economy, right? So, um, yeah, a militarized Africa. Let's see what that looks like. I got a quick. Let me give me 1 second. Can you give me a quick and brief synopsis on what a successful militarized Africa would look like and how it would affect a Western economy and how soon that could actually be a reality? Let's get Chat GPT. If y'all don't got it already, I think it. I'm not gonna say good or evil. I'm gonna say it's a tool that can be used for good or evil, and leave it at that. Okay, so what a successful militarized Africa would look like? It says here, a successful militarized Africa would mean a continental or regional defense structure that is African-led, not Western-controlled. Pan-African military coalitions like AES, Blck of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso protecting borders, resources, and sovereignty. African nations producing their own weapons, technology, and defense in the industries. A unified security doctrine aligned with African interests, not foreign alliances. Impact on Western economies, loss of cheap access to critical minerals like gold, uranium, cobalt, and lithium. Diminished influence over African governments and trade policy, potential disruption of global supply chains, especially in energy, tech, and agriculture, increased competition from Russia, China, Turkey, and other non-Western allies of Africa. Now consider this. The United States depends on African resources. If they should so lose those access to those resources at competitive rates, then their competitors are going to eat them alive. And trust me, Russia and China and these type of nations are waiting in the clutches for these opportunities. That's why they're in the back door game in Africa, hoping that they can get a stronger position, right? So this puts and gives Africa what we call leverage. Short term, let's say this could become a reality in less than 1 to 3 years. Regional coalitions like AES grow stronger. They reject foreign bases and increase military self-reliance. Now, there's a African woman who did a video recently talking about how embassies all over Africa are silently closing, especially in these type of regions. Ask yourself what that means. I talked about that in the beginning of this stream. You know what I mean? Long term, 10 to 20 years, full continental military autonomy, resource control, and strategic independence from NATO or AFRICOM. Fascinating. The bottom line, a military sovereign Africa would reshape the global order, just like I said, cutting off the West back door to African wealth and putting Africans in charge of their own defense, diplomacy, and destiny. So we're going to ask ChatGPT 2 more questions. 1. So Africa may be behind Western powers with military might, especially when it comes to nuclear capabilities, but how could it, in a futuristic capacity, protect its sovereignty and its borders and its interests with new and innovative forms of technology and militarized weaponry? Let's see what its response is. Sorry, I'm gonna light up a little spliff. Scene.
Scene.
Mm-hmm. Don't worry, I got this from the corner store. Pure legal. Mm-hmm. Going on to say, so how a futuristically militarized Africa could protect itself. Drone and autonomous warfare. Affordable drones for surveillance, defense, and targeted operations already used effectively by Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Burkina Faso. Like you were saying earlier, Ethiopia has a very strong military might, and everybody knows that historically. They're not to be played with. You know what I mean? to develop or partner with China, Turkey, or Iran to create AI-guided drone fleets? I think they already are. Personally, that's what the United States fears. I think from 2005 timeframe, they were anticipating this type of military activity and militarization. So they try to get ahead of the curve by creating AFRICOM. Swarm drones can neutralize large, expensive Western systems. Drones are the nukes of the poor, and Africa can master them first. Y'all hear that? Drones are the nukes of the poor. Wow. It's funny how the drones were how they were overthrowing governments, how they were essentially bragging. Obama bragged about drones. I want to say 2012 Predator drones. Like if somebody was dating his daughter, Predator drones. It was like a joke he made. But that's what you guys was doing. That's what these people was doing in Africa. So now, could that backfire and be Africa's way out of, right, Western European dominance? Neocolonialism, for lack of a better word. Moving on, satellite sovereignty. Invest in African satellite networks for secure communication, geolocation, border monitoring, and early warning systems. I believe this is why the United States just created the Space Force, understanding that the new power on Earth is outside of Earth. That recently, I think Elon Musk was threatening to close one of his space stations, which, from what I understand, the world and the United States depend on. From what I understand, the United States depended on one of his satellites, and essentially their own stopped working, so they had to rely on Musk's. That's fascinating. We should never be in that position, but that's a whole nother conversation. So control of space means control of defense, intelligence, and trade lanes. Think about it. The internet itself, right? Communications themselves. You can, even Starlink is something that you may not depend on Wi-Fi, but you definitely still depend on satellite, right? And trade lanes. So cyber defense and warfare. And I think this is where Africa thrives. All those Nigerians and people that y'all been talking down on, claiming that they're, from third world countries and lower IQ, and no, these people have a very high IQ. They've been working with the lowest or the bottom of tech and still been hacking your accounts, still been hacking your databases and systems. Imagine when these Nigerian kids get put through school. These kids are doing it on their own. Imagine they get put in school and given the highest forms of technology to accomplish what they're doing. Imagine creating a Pan-African cyber command centers to defend infrastructure, hack foreign surveillance, and control narrative spaces. Even a space like, say, for example, Meta. Right, Meta is going to be a realm of its own, with its own legal infrastructure. Imagine you doing business on Meta every day, and that database or that system being hacked by a Nigerian. Shout out to Nigerians. I see me I say, which I am also descendant from. See me I say. Nigerians are some of the most intelligent people on this earth. And let's be very clear about this. As a matter of fact, there's a Nigerian scholar, businessman, who moved to Japan and out-tested every Japanese person in one of these formal college tests. I want to say it's 80s. Don't quote me. Go and look into it. He ended up opening a business there and staying there, I believe. But I mean, incredible, and we can go on and on into that. But let's get back to the topic. Use of blockchain and quantum encryption for unbreakable communications. So y'all know about the Underground Railroad, Civil War, how quintessential it was for the interconnectedness of those trying to escape slavery into safer zones. Now you understand about the quilts, you understand about the coded language, you understood about the songs. But now imagine a digital sovereignty being the new battlefield. Which country has the ability to communicate without someone interceding or infiltrating, right? Having a direct line and having it backed by cyber command centers to defend infrastructure. That's powerful. Imagine Africa having its own network, untapped and unfiltered by any other country or continent. That's something they don't have. But imagine if they had. I'm sure some lines do have it, so don't quote me on that either. But I'm sure some do. But imagine now that being centralized with a command center as a headquarters for the continent. Moving on, strategic resource militarization, controlling export flows. This is big. Using rare earths and mineral wealth like cobalt, lithium, uranium. We can go on to gold, platinum, diamond, if y'all will, right? As strategic leverage, right? And imagine now controlling the exports. What if Africa closed its borders to the Suez Canal, locked down with the military naval fleet, locked down the entire Horn of Africa and the southern, right, Africa and all of the regions, right, below Ethiopia and Tanzania, you see what I'm saying? And had those secure with naval fleets and with a command center to control communications and drones to repel, like imagine their own Iron Dome infrastructure, right? And a global pride, you know what I'm saying, for these people, right? So Africa holds the minerals the future runs on. It just needs to guard the gates. Imagine. So the game is already won. Africa just has to go and win it, if that makes sense. Right. Notice how I said it just needs to guard the gates. That's fascinating because it brings me back to, right, commander of the gate, Dejashmach, the title for a nobleman who's been given the authority to guard an important city. Like, for example, Ejerzagoro, where His Imperial Majesty was born, and from what I understand, Harar was one of the most important trade cities in Ethiopian history. And during the times of Selassie and his father Michael, or guardian, the victor of the Battle of Adwa, right, Rashomon, you see that they were given the title Dejashmach, and protecting that realm was quintessential to, and I know I keep using the word, forgive the eye, but it was quintessential for them to secure the realm, right? Because all these trading was going on. How do you manage friend from foe, like Jay-Z say, right? Friend from foe, nigga, state your biz. How do you manage that? You have to be a very strong commander of the gate. Feel me? So now Africa's not going to stop doing trade with other countries. They're not going to stop outsourcing resources, but they have to not control the resources that they let out and control what comes in. That's been Africa's problem. Imagine if they master that, become masterful gatekeepers like a goalie. You know what I mean? Knowing how to stop unwanted, right, enemies coming into or invading or infiltrating. So I'm saying the greater body. Moving on, indigenous tech and guerrilla innovation to encourage African universities and startups to design cheap, rugged, tactical gear using local materials. My opinion, that's not even going to be necessary because this hasn't even got to one of the bigger things, which I think AI. AI. When you talk about raw materials, you mean I can go to my backyard and I can build a AI bot, right? Or I can build a fleet of bots, right? Versus your country might need to come to my country to get your material to build your bots, and I might cut that off and say, hey, I ain't giving you no more raw materials. Build your own with your own raw materials. Feel what I'm saying? Now, let's say hypothetically that country wants to build their own with their own materials, but unfortunately, they don't have a workforce. They just put the workforce out of the country. So said.
Yeah.
Or they just put the affordable workforce out of the country. Right. These AI products ain't gonna build themselves. Eventually they will. You feel me? But not at this point. So, that's a lot to think about. And the timeline, realistically, for all of this, what AI is saying could be 2025 to 2030, where tech partnerships, drone development, cyber alliances form. It could be 2030 to 2035, where satellite and AI defense grids are finally in place. And it could be 2040, where full operational independence, digital military complex, possibly even African-made hypersonic or orbital defense is now in place. Right. And what does that mean? That could mean Africa could reign supreme for after the next 40 years. That means 100 years after Africa's liberation. Now they have become what we call, not dominated. They have become independent and fully grown and developed. But so now then another 50 to 100 years, they could become now one of the foremost, strongest nations. Let's say another 100 or 200 years, they could become the most, I said nations, I meant to say continents, right? They could become the foremost, most powerful and centralized and dominating governance and military might and continents on planet Earth, right? So that's a pretty powerful concept, to think that, because I think people realistically are afraid, like, if a Western nation is not happy, they're going to throw a tantrum and just hurl off a nuclear missile. But I don't. I think the safe keep is that you throw one, Russia's throwing one, China's throwing one, and right, you see what I'm saying? So you might not want to play like that unless you're really ready to just off it all, and then that's no good for humanity. If you've been in a position as a political leader to protect and preserve human life, why are you destroying it? At some point, it's got to be a balance. You know what I mean? And we put our faith and trust in Jah, right? Almighty will keep the faith, keep the balance as He leverages power against itself. You know what I mean? So I want to give a segue, give you an opportunity to give some feedback on what we talked about, discussed, and then we can start kind of getting ready to wrap it up.
Sure. Yeah, that's. I feel like that's a lot of insight, in what you were just speaking on. I think that's basically what will happen if Africa militarizes and takes back control of their own resources. Then that, like you said, that balance and order will be restored throughout the world,
right?
And how that's going to look from a futuristic standpoint, as far as all the creation of robots and these automated self-sustaining systems. I don't know, at least on my end, I need to do some more research, but I think that you pretty much gave a lot of really great insight into what that could look like. And I know that this is not going to happen without a fight, probably with a lot of what we see going on right now. The Western powers trying to fight to maintain their dominance, maintain the global reserve currency as the rest of the world goes back to gold-backed currency systems. But the inevitable is going to happen.
Do you feel like the world is going to revert to gold back, or do you feel like it's going digital? Because this is my opinion, is the West answer to the dollar no longer being a world reserve currency, and to the global economy crashing, right, would be to enter into some form of a conflict with the means to reposition themselves in Africa again as a dominating power, right? And also um, and to create what we call Fed Now, right? Fed Now is the rollout plan, right? We'll pull currency off of the market, right? But first, we'll test the market by generating things like Bitcoin, letting it be a free market for people to engage. It's not regulated federally or what have you. People get comfortable and complacent, and this shows the holes that this new digital currencies represent for the future. And so now we can make modifications behind the scenes on our Fed Now, right? So that when immediately when it needs to be introduced to the market, the kinks and quirks are already worked out. Because this is a completely different infrastructure of currency that they're trying to initiate, and they have to give people what's called incentive to get involved. So I wouldn't be surprised if when they finally start to integrate this technology, they're giving an unprecedented amount of benefits. It's like, come join the new world order and you get blank, 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 and blank. But they're not going to tell you is you get, so they'll tell you, just like the Industrial Revolution, when they told you come move up north or to California for the gold rush, it'll be very similar, that come join this great reset and get a digital ID, utilize the digital currency, utilize the ability to open doors, windows, and every other thing with just your mind through things like Neuralink, which are still way behind in their efficacy. They're still lacking. They still have to be a surgical procedure to put Neuralink in your head. But once they finally get to the point where they could introduce Neuralink through nanotech, maybe even a pill or a donut you ate, or if they could somehow get the Neuralink connected to you biologically by something you either drank but through a shot versus a surgery, that transforms things now. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. So, and this is where things like all your wildest imaginations come true if you're a worldly, or what you would call, if you're a carnal-minded person. A carnal-minded person wants to explore living forever through transhumanism. A carnally minded person wants to be able to emit thoughts to another person's head through technology, and to hear thoughts from their head, to open all of their doors, cars, and everything with a thought, not even a word sound. See me, I say? Mm-hmm. For them, that's power, all power. They feel all powerful. Like, I live forever, I can open anything. But you can't open anything. You have to open what man's made with his hands. You can't go open a mountain. You know what I'm saying? You might be able to make a mountain move, see me, I say, but you might not be able to open the mountain, see me, I say, with just a thought. We teach, faith without works is dead. See me, I say? Mm-hmm. So, there's differences there. We can get into that. But I'm just using that to say the carnal-minded person is excited about this future to come, where AI does his work every day, where he sits in a meta realm and has orgies all day, or smokes the greatest green he ever had. And he's really just all in his mind through a realm which has a legal framework put in place. Can you imagine if you could go in the realm, but you couldn't leave the realm, even if you wanted to? If I can control your brain, can I not also make you stay in that realm? Like a rat in a maze, every time you think you're getting out, you're going nowhere but right back in. What is the man to gain the world? See me, I say, for what is it for a man to gain the world but to lose his soul? What is soul? Will. For the man to lose his will. You in a realm, you working now you work 9 to 5 with your body. So you kind of did lose your will, but that's your body. That's not your mind though. Y'all gave him the body because y'all wake up don't tell me you didn't give him the body when you go wake up every day and go into that company and clap cheeks for that CEO who tells you jump and you say how hot. But your husband or your wife asks you to grab a glass of water, you say what? See me, I say.
Yep.
Right? They own your body. You can tell me they don't, but in a way, they kind of own your mind too, because you're gonna give them your full attention. You're not gonna be on your phone at work. Most jobs, most professional jobs. See me, I say.
Right.
Now there are some, and I should give a shout out to the entrepreneurs out there, Rastafari, see me, I say, who go to work when they ready to. See me, I say, who get on their phone when they ready to. See me, I say, who go home when they ready to. See me, I say, who they have a direct with the customer relationship that can immediately be terminated if the customer should so get out of their head that shit sweet like that. That's with an owner of a business. See me, I say, it's different when you wake up and clock in and the owner of that business tell you this or that. Now, I'm not knocking a person that do that. See me, I say, because they could also very well get up off the job site and go home. People do it every day. Right? But here in the future, now this is where segue, in the future, you may not just be able to get off and go home. Right now, you're tired. Even if you was tired at work, you can sit on the floor and say, I ain't doing shit. The police might come remove you or take you off the premises because you're trespassing or been trespassed. You see what I'm saying? That's, but you can't just say, I'm not working no more and sit on the floor wherever you are, whatever job you're working right now. But in the future, when I got nanobots in your head or I got Neuralink in your head, when I can click you on or click you off with your currency now, right? When I can tax you for social credits because you're around this person or that person that I don't like or don't agree with my policies. See, y'all want to know, y'all see how bad Facebook is. You want to get a thought out and the thought police come, snatch your thought out the air real quick. Make sure it don't hit the World Wide Web, or at least in that realm. Imagine what it, see me, I say, imagine what it'd be like in these digital realms. You want to say something and you cut off, thrown into a corner like Clubhouse. You know what I mean? Clubhouse is another level than Facebook, because on Facebook you can just say, I'm finna post this, ban, shadow block, right? Cancel, terminate account. But in this realm, in this like you might say on Facebook, this pissed me off or that. Right? But if you get this nanobot or technology in your head, you can't even think it, dog. You thought what? See me, I say the thought police for real. You know what I mean? What's the movie with Tom Cruise? Minority Report.
Yeah.
Look at that. Perfect example. And they put it all in the movies, everything. Demolition Man, another one. Right? Where you see Wesley Snipes versus Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester's encapsulated in a ice glacial, you know what I mean? Preserved for a time in the future where he's unearthed with his arch enemy and nemesis, Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes ran around like Bebop and Rocksteady with the with the Meteor Man top, you know what I mean? So, but that's dope though, because like that is a perfect example of what's coming. Watch the movie Demolition Man, you know what I'm saying? And people, they telling you what all the media y'all been watching for so many years. Go watch Jetsons. They telling you. You know what I mean? I don't care what it is. They're telling you, even the international wars, they're telling you on Star Wars what it is in space. You know what I mean? Right? They showing you in Star Wars, we just made a space force, y'all. We're not far from Star Wars, if man continue on. And people think like the battle is just here on Earth. They don't realize, in the future it might be out in space. It already is, really, technically. And they don't got to tell us what happened in space. That's classified. You know what I mean? We just shot a Chinese airplane down. They don't have to tell you. You know what I mean? We just went and sent so and so to kill so and so on space station so and so to make sure that we could diffract the satellites connection for bandwidth for, you know what I'm saying, Americans and everywhere alike. You know, it seems like
Hmm.
all that's possible. So anyway, I don't want to talk just to talk. We've had an amazing, amazing conversation today, Bridger. That's one thing that's for sure. I've been blown away at some of the concepts that ChatGPT is presenting and showing, and these are things you don't think about. But now, thinking critically, what if Africa had her own Iron Dome? What if Africa had a command center for communications? And what if Africa protected its borders from, from foreign interests to protect their own interests? Like how America's saying, "Make America great again." What if Africa said, "Make Africa great again"? Ooh,
Right.
uh-oh, you know what I mean? What if they said, "We deporting all Americans from Africa"? And I mean, technically, he's deporting people for their faith base, right? What if he said, "We're deporting Christians"? It seemed like he deported a lot of Muslim nations, right?
Hmm.
Anybody practicing Islam ring a bell to me. So I'm like, dang, so if he's doing that, what if Africa did? They said, "We're closing our borders to foreign interests to preserve our own interests." And Africa is now adopting a policy to extradite all people who practice Western Christianity,
Mm.
particularly any form of Christianity that descend directly from the Holy Roman Empire. You're immediately expelled. Imagine,
Mm.
because technically that's what invaded their countries. The Crusades and all that's behind religious wars. When you think about it, you see me, I say.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm just giving you that just to give you a picture of. And what's fascinating is the pendulum swings. You know what I'm saying? The pendulum swing. It went Africa created mankind. Mankind evolved and created culture, created language systems, created hieroglyphs, created phonetics, created mathematics, and the sciences, all birthed from the belly of Africa and then spread around the entire world. That's what it started as. That's the pendulum pulling
Hmm.
it back, right? And then it went to now European dominance on planet Earth. European being a mutation from African is now taking over the entire global economy. All of the continents and the resources are now in direct possession of this dragon who brought the whole world to war. And then now you see the pendulum coming back because that's pretty far. If you think about 150 million slaughtered in Africa, 11 million or to 20 million, some estimates in the Congo alone, and you compare and look at the invasion, the Berlin Conference, this invasion of this whole continent now is historically etched in stone. This invasion of this continent now has sealed this transition of the pendulum in blood.
Hmm.
Feel me? So now the pendulum has went all the way that you can go to dogging a people out. You went. Now the pendulum, by nature, the people have already pushed the pendulum. I can't stop it. It's already in motion. See me, I say His Majesty is
Yeah.
the one who pushed the pendulum. When you think about it, did he not judge the nations? Right?
Hmm.
Condemn them publicly. He was the first one. So who's the first one to shame the nations for the wickedness and not helping and assisting this small, I won't say small, but the Horn of Africa and Ethiopia? It was only one that had the power and the authority. He was the head of the church, the head of the Oriental Orthodox Tewahedo Church, head of the Solomonic dynasty. If y'all Christians, then you should have completely and utterly given all of your allegiance to him. Any Christian or nation, I don't care if you come from the Holy Roman Catholic Church, because they come from Christianity as well. Right? For God maketh evil and good for his pleasure. See?
Hmm.
So you see the Catholic Church co-opted, right? the universal church what co-opted the original church and the faith now being centralized for essentially monetization. The Knights Templar would protect people in Israel that were there for their sacred reasons, and foreign powers, especially the Ottoman Empire, would invade and they would try to kill them. You know what I mean? For visiting. So now, I'm sorry, not the Ottoman Empire. This is a time during Knights Templar. Forgive me, but during this time, the Knights Templar basically protected Christians who went to visit Israel, and this being their job, right? Essentially, they monetized or benefited, right, from this religious movement. You feel me? Um, so it's just a lot of things happening with this pendulum going from one extreme into the next, and the momentum. When you look at a pendulum, first it pulls all the way back, and then right it just drops, and the weight and the momentum pick up, the force so much that it goes all the way up with whatever momentum it had all the way back. The momentum that we had to go back was racism, fascism, Nazism, right? Capitalism, which in a sense, extreme capitalism, so I can put it in the proper context, because balanced capitalism may work, extreme capitalism cannot. See what I'm saying? Where you say legally monopolies are illegal, but then you have monopolies. That's not justice, and it can't work. It can't work. You can't tell me you have 700 trillion and billion and the zillion. See what I'm saying? And then, but these monopolies are illegal entities. What? Take the what? Lead the what? Man, crazy. That's a double standard. You know what I mean? That's what you call hypocrites, broods of vipers. See me I say? Because, you know what I'm saying? Like, and these broods of vipers have the audacity to sit here and say things like useless eaters, paupers, to call them third world nations, and to decide or consider or do or work towards creating a board that decides whether you live or die. You know what I mean? Right? Or and then you look at eugenics and the concept of them already ingrained in their theology, believe that some should live and some should die. Dang. Now now let's do the math and see what a counter culture would look like. They're standing on lies, we're standing on truth. They're standing on quicksand, we're standing on solid rock. Lalibela. See me I say? When we ask them where's their kingdom of God on earth, they see me I say they can't show me I am. Because see me I say you can't show me a emperor I. You can't show me a Solomonic dynasty I am. You can't do it. See me I say you'll show me a serpent seed. You'll show me a person who essentially seized power, like Caesar. Or Cesare Borgia. You know what I mean? And you see that this seizing of power is in direct conflict with, or attempt to seize power is in direct conflict with Almighty and his kingdom. Because Almighty ordained the kings on earth. The Bible say the devil shall try to take heaven by force. Did Italy and the Vatican not try to take Ethiopia by force?
Right.
And is Ethiopia not also referenced as heaven on earth and biblical Zion and the Garden of Eden? Is it not? Because we know it is, right? And if they have the sacred Ark of the Covenant and they try to invade, Italy tried to invade. That to me now, not tried, they invaded, right? This just shows you that the pendulum swung. Now, what does it look like swinging back? Well, let's look. Italy was held back by who? None other than His Majesty. So that's the end of the pendulum swing. at Selassie's doorsteps, the pendulum stopped and started to now maneuver its way the other way. See me, I said. I mean, the T, feel me? Now we going, and the momentum is it's like a roller coaster. We going down. We don't know where this thing going. We scared. I don't know where this going to land. We going somewhere. And with our momentum and happiness and excitement about the future and being free, see me, I say free to choose our own destiny. Now the pendulum, where is it going to go? It's going to go sky high next. And I think black people are not riding on this. They're riding with Europe this way. They're still stuck. Now imagine you're Europe being pulled this way first. You're being pulled this way.
Yeah.
Right? That's what inertia is, or what you would call gravity. Europe was in a place where they was on top. Now what happens when you go to the top? Gravity. Okay. Midea. See me, I say. And now the down pull of gravity, the gravitational pull, is now, imagine you were looking up on top of the world and now you're falling backwards, like going back on a trampoline from the middle of the air. See me, I say, where are you going to land at? You better hope you have a trampoline underneath the eye. Okay.
Yes,
you better. And we'll wrap this up. You better hope you got a trampoline underneath the eye. See me, I say. When you loop around, and it start going sky high, and you still on that end, and you getting pushed this way. Okay, so now I think Africans could slow this thing down. And that's where Africa was saying that before the pendulum was so high. Africa was saying, slow down. Let's balance this thing out so we don't all go too far off, too high. But no, the other powers wouldn't do it. They decided off against it. So now Africa has been reborn. Africa has made it through her Armageddon. See me, I say? And we look at the realization that now the world seems to be, see me, I say, headed towards its. Okay. But thanks, man. I don't want to hold you up too long, brethren. I know we all got things the eye got to do. It's already 5, by the way. So I'm sure we got some material, though. Let's cut it up, chop it up, put it out. See what I'm saying? Put it on a bunch of little reels. See me, I say, Brother Joshua been doing a lot of the, the graphics or the editing for the video footage. And I appreciate the eye for that. Thanks for everybody that support us, follow us, continue to check in with us, watch our page, subscribe, like the channel, share, and all of that. You know what I mean? I don't want to sound like the rest of these people who go on for cash apps. I just want to give y'all some, street knowledge that are made scholars that we coin phrases for dollars type vibes. See what I'm saying? Not the tip scales for mail just to keep these niggas off balance. Not that. We want to give you, you know what I mean? We want to give you genuine service in the name of our Lord and Savior, His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I, who come in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christos, or what the Western world calls Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Give thanks to Almighty Yah, Rastafari, Kedamawi Selassie I the first.
Yeah, the first.
Okay, I just ended the stream. Rastafari. Okay, I thought it ended. Is it done? Or is it done?
It's still going.
Still going. Damn, my boy.